Hey, I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourself, taking care of the people that you love. I know that holiday season is upon us, and Thanksgiving is next week. And so I know that can be difficult for some people with various family situations. And so if that is you, I am sending my love to you. This episode is coming out a little bit later than usual because for the past 2 weeks I've been trying to find a home for Wine, Dine, and 69. All Ports Open was the original hosting network for this podcast, but it ceased being a network about a year ago. They still gave us a home. I wasn't ready to leave quite yet, and so I've continued being hosted by them, but at this point, they're kind of just totally disbanding. Joshua Wise, who is an incredible writer and great person, runs Wise More, and it's an amazing place with stories and there's a podcast called Weeping Cedars, which is really well done, and he also does different streaming things on Twitch, so definitely check it out. They've moved on to a new chapter of doing things, and it's time for me to do the same thing. So I switched to Spotify for podcasters as the host, and I'm telling you all of this because it's been engulfing my life for the past 2 weeks, but really not much should change for you in theory. You can still get the podcast in all the places, and it should be the same experience. So it's all technical stuff on my end. And there will be some more technical things on my end that will be changing in this next year. But I won't bore you with the details. So just not even sure what they're going to be yet. So moving right along, in this week's edition of If He Wanted To, He Would. Ladies, or whoever, if he wanted to, he would. Do not settle for less. Do not make excuses for people. Because if he really wanted to, he would. This morning, my boyfriend and I spent at least an hour laying in bed together, and he downloaded a period tracking app, synced it to my period tracking app, so that he can know what cycles I'm in when. He also then did research on what a menstrual cycle looks like, what my moods might be like during those menstrual cycles. All because he wants to know better how to support me at whatever time it might be. When might I want sweets? When might I want pizza? When will I be really moody and he should just remember not to take things so personally? When might I want to have sex? Listeners may or may not know that I was diagnosed with PMDD about 3 years ago, which is different from PMS. If you want to know more about it, there's an episode that I did with my friend Allison from college on PMDD. I'll link it in the episode notes if you want to learn more about that. But it makes, there are a few periods a year that are really tough for me. And this was one of them. And so he took this opportunity to figure out what he could do for me to make my life easier. He downloaded a period tracking app just so he can understand me and my moods better. He's done research to figure out what a period cycle looks like. I have never had someone put in this much effort to try to understand me. And I can't go back. I will never be able to go back. And I think of all the times that I just wanted somebody to care a little bit more or try a little harder, and This is just a really good example. If he wanted to, he would. Don't make excuses for people. Strive for more. I know I'm done making excuses for people. All right, cool. Moving right along. All right, last week was a little bit of a heavy episode, although really important. I hope you enjoyed is probably the wrong word, but I hope that you took a lot away and learned a lot from my discussion with Crystal. But today we are going to be talking about creativity. We're going to talk a little bit about reality TV and therapy and how to hone in on your creativity. Melody, I had such a fun time with Melody as a guest. I could have talked to her for forever. And yeah, she used to be a reality TV producer, which is just insane and was so cool to talk about. And then she switched over to doing therapy. We talk about how working with adults versus children is different, what we can learn from children, and how we can learn creativity from children. So we're really chock full of a lot of gems in this episode here. So I hope you enjoy it. Melody released a book just in September, brand new book called Mourning the Living. And you can get it on her website, www.melodylmft, licensed marriage family therapist is what that stands for, .com. And you can also get her newsletter there and other merch. And you can also see a clip from her interview on the Today Show, which is pretty fucking cool. I'll put all that in the show notes. And you know, the other thing I'm going to put into the show notes is we talk a little bit about all walks and how creativity can come from just taking a walk and being present and witnessing all of the things around you. So I'm also going to link in the episode notes an article to the New York Times, which is how I learned about all walks. And I'm a big fan. Okay, I think that's all from me this week. We did If You Wanted To, We Would. We talked about the holidays. And hey, on that note, take care of yourself. Even people who don't have an incredibly strained family situation have a tough time during the holidays. Returning home, if that's what you're doing, I find that it makes me transport back a little bit and I regress. I take on the role that I had in childhood a little bit. I mean, I don't become a child again, but I start to take on that role in my family dynamic a little bit. Take care of yourself. Know that you're worthy. Know that the holiday season will end, and just try to enjoy the small moments, those little glimmers that you can. And yeah, take care of yourself. It's not going to be perfect. I think I've let go of that nostalgic idea about perfect holidays with the family, but it is what it is, right? And the imperfect is kind of beautiful too. So, all right, that's it from me. I'm going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then please enjoy my conversation with Melody Murray.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, an actual play podcast in the game world of Masks, a new generation. Join our heroes as they struggle to build a team and save the city. Can Titan escape the shadow of his mentor burnout? Is Soul's overwhelming power too dangerous to control? Will Muse discover her past? And how does White Knight stomach all those strange snacks? Listen to Delinquent Comics to find out at allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. New issues become available to all citizens every other Monday.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am very excited. I've taken a little break from interviewing, but I'm back doing some interviews, and I have a fantastic guest to bring us into this new season of interviewing. Today, I have Melody Murray with me. Melody, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I love your name, by the way. I'm a singer, and so, I just love the name Melody. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to name my kid Melody.
Oh, I met, do you know the producer, what's his name? Foster. He's huge. He's married to
Hunter Foster?
Kathy. There we go. I
Yeah.
met him once. And
Oh, cool.
Isn't it amazing? He said, "Oh my gosh, please tell me you can sing melody." And I said, "Wouldn't it be amazing if I could? This would be too perfect. I can barely hum."
Well, that's too bad, but it's still a beautiful. Your speaking voice is very melodious, so.
Thank you.
But speaking of the producing, actually, it's so funny. Hunter Foster is directing Rocky Horror Picture Show in my area right now, currently. So funny connection. Let's start. I mean, you have a very varied background. You juggle a ton of different hats, but let's start with you just starting to tell me a little bit about you, how you view yourself, and overall your story.
I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I just released my very first book, Mourning the Living When the Loved One You've Lost is Still Here. I like to describe it as, I like to whet people's appetite by saying, is there anyone that's still alive, but they're dead to you? Mm-hmm. If that's the case, this is the book for you.
Wish I had that 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's, and right before the holidays, it's a great book to have because we all have to sit across the table from our, idiot uncle so-and-so.
Right.
And so I just released that book. I have my second book on the way because hello, ADHD and overachieving. I got another one coming. But I've been a mental health therapist since 2012 after pivoting from being a reality TV producer and director for several years. And I did, weaving into that, I did stand-up comedy. I've worked in a hospital emergency department doing psych assessments on people that are homicidal and suicidal. And originally from Texas, but lived in LA and lived in Seattle. Now I'm back in Texas, which is so strange.
Same area?
Strange. Yeah, same area. And it's, the city is different and I'm different. And it's a trip. It's a trip. It's a trip. So yeah, that's me. Like travel is a big deal for me. I absolutely love to travel. And I was gone for 5 months. I was abroad for 5 months last year. And I haven't traveled at all this year, which is so strange
for
someone that's constantly living out a suitcase, which I was doing when I was, a director. I was in a different city every few months. You know the drill. You're always on the road and you're, living, out of a suitcase in hotels and you get this crash course in different people's lives and cultures in their cities. And then I came to a screeching halt. And here I am now, a mental health therapist in private practice.
Yeah, I am so interested to delve into some of the psychology of reality TV. But the first question I have to ask is, how much of it is real?
Well, it depends on the show. Yeah, no, it depends on the show. There are some shows that are scripted to the hilt. Hello, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And I have friends that work on that show. No disrespect to them. They make a shitload of money.
Yeah.
But I never worked on those shows. That stuff just made my skin crawl. Some shows are very, very documentary based, which is what I preferred. And that's what helped me make it an very easy swing from reality TV to mental health, because I just love being able to just watch and observe how people respond to life happening. And I directed mini seasons of The Real World that used to be on MTV.
Yeah.
One of the granddaddies or grandmamas of reality TV, and also Bad Girls Club.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one too.
That one's a trip. It depends on the show. I mean, there are a ton of shows that are scripted, but the scripted shows are the ones where I believe the people are just boring. There's so many people that have great personalities, great lives, and you don't have to do anything but just put a camera on them.
Yeah, totally. I know. I'm always like, why are these people famous?
It's such a weird world that we're living in right now.
It's very, very bizarre.
Why are they famous and why are they rolling in the dough?
It's so funny. Like the whole Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith thing that's been going around lately, where she just keeps sharing information about their life.
Well,
And
that's a narcissist,
I'm just like, what are you doing?
well, she's just rocking that narcissist hat.
Oh my
That's what
gosh.
she's doing. She's throwing her family and her husband under the bus to sell books.
There's so many other things going on in the world right now that deserve our attention. Everything I have learned about their relationship has been learned non-consensually.
Non-consensual disclosure.
Yes.
Reception. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But that's a narcissist. I remember asking a casting director friend of mine, how do you choose when there are, certain shows that there are thousands and thousands of people that apply to be on a show? How do you narrow it down to 5, 6, 7 people? And he said something key to me that I'll never forget. He said, you just pick out the narcissist in the room.
I mean, that's a surefire way to get drama.
Yeah, they just go at each other because they all want to be top dog. They all think that what is going on with them is more important than what's going on with anybody else. They can only see things through their own lens. You just pick a bunch of narcissists and turn on the camera.
Wow. Yeah, that it does itself.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it sounds like, that is a great segue into the question that I have about essentially, what did you learn about humanity from being in that field? And did that have to do with why you left?
Yes. I learned that everyone, regardless of age, just desires to be seen and heard. We all want to make sure that how we feel and what we want matters to someone. However we feel what we want to make sure that it matters. And we will do whatever it takes to be seen and to be heard. And that was a big part of why I would actually say that is the biggest part, why I decided to transition out of it, is because situations on reality sets are typically heightened because you've got usually a group of people that have not learned how to manage their emotions. This is why they get chosen to live their lives on camera, or why they ask and audition and pitch themselves to be on reality TV shows. They want to be seen and heard, but they typically have not learned how to calmly and sensibly handle themselves when something goes wrong. And I got to a point where it felt that I transitioned from the job being fun to it feeling exploitive, because people would have these really hard moments and my job was to document it. And as I grew and kept engaging and diving deeper into my own healing and my own past, my own trauma, I realized how vulnerable they all were and are, and how I did not want to be a part of documenting someone's toughest moment. I wanted to be able to intervene. I wanted to be able to help. I wanted to be able to support. And that's not the job of a producer or a director. Your job is to document and get the best angle. And I wanted to be able to be there to help.
You wanted to be part of the solution.
I wanted to be a part of the solution. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, there are a lot of conversations going on right now, specifically, I think, with Love is Blind, about mental health and how people are treated when they're shooting the show. Like, they on The Bachelor, they ply them with alcohol and they're running on 3 hours of sleep. And that's just a recipe for drama if people are hangry and they're tired. And so you've spoken a little bit about this in articles, but I'd like to talk about more about the intersection of reality TV and mental health.
Sure. I one thing that you said that I do want to, again, I haven't worked on every single show, but knowing the behind the scenes of producing a show, cast members aren't plied with alcohol. They can't. It's a liability. The alcohol is there, And in a lot of shows, like I did The Real World, we never bought them alcohol. They had to spend their own money to buy their own alcohol. It's a liability. No production company is going to put themselves at risk of someone flipping out on the alcohol that a production company purchased.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, so that is something that little tidbit of something, if that's helpful for people and how they view it. It's people who don't know how to handle themselves under stressful situations. And that sleep thing, that is real, because shoot days are really, really long. Shoot days are long. And it's like, we need to get the shot, and we need to get the sound bites, and we need to get the angles. We need to get what we need to get. And so, yeah, that it's people are exhausted because we need to shoot what we need to shoot. But again, 99.9% of everybody on a reality show is getting paid to be there. And they've signed documents to be there. And they're typically over the age of 18. So
that's a good thing.
yeah. And so, but it's so this is where it's like their responsibility. And you come across some people that don't want to take responsibility for their own behavior. That's a lot of people.
Oh, that is a lot of people. Accountability.
That's a lot of people. Just to go back to the narcissist point, narcissists are people that they're never accountable for their own behavior.
Yep.
Everything is everybody else's fault. Now, obviously, there are situations where people have truly been harmed. They've been the victims of crimes, even, not their fault. But there are many, many, many people that are doing what they want to do. And when it doesn't turn out the way that they want, it doesn't look the way that they want, then they can point a finger if they want.
It's like the narcissist's prayer. I remember how it goes off the top of my head, but it's like, if that happened, then no, it didn't. And if it did happen, then it wasn't that big of a deal. And if it was that big of a deal, then you're overreacting. And if you're not overreacting, then you deserved it.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Actually remembered more of that than I thought I would. Go figure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. It sounds like, and this isn't surprising, I suppose, but a lot of the times when these shows are getting cast, they are intentionally choosing the people who are going to cause the most drama, bring in the most ratings, bring in the money.
Yep, that's exactly right. I remember when The Real World changed. I don't know if you watched it from the beginning, but in the beginning, I really loved the intention. The intention was dialogue. Bring people from different backgrounds together and have them talk and see if they can get along and see where the friction is, but see how they handle the friction and then come together. That was the initial intention. And then it shifted into who's going to fight, who's going to fuck.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants to know. That's what we learn in acting school, right? The two strongest emotions are wanting to fight and wanting to fuck.
Yeah. And so that's what, and I feel like all of them have shifted into that headspace of who's going to fight and who's going to fuck. And it's just so sad, the genre, how it's changed and morphed. And it doesn't even matter what the content is. Love is Blind, this latest season, was shot here in Houston, where I am right now.
Oh, okay.
And it was just a shit show. The casting was so bad.
That's what I've heard.
So bad. And you know, it was sad. They had one couple out of all of those people, that had one couple get married out of all of the people that had gotten together. And then they had, from what they say behind the scenes, one couple where there was a sexual assault, and they've wiped them clean of the show, which I understand why they did it, but it was just shit. Who they chose to be on the show was absolute crap.
And that can completely make or break how successful the show is. And you also need, I think about, I did not watch the most recent season of Love is Blind, but I think about the first season where you had that couple. I forget I think his name was Cameron. Maybe not though. But there was that couple who you were rooting for from the beginning, and you need some of that levity.
Cameron and Lauren, the white guy and the black girl.
You were rooting for them from the day one, from the get-go. You need that.
You need that. And they're still together.
I
They're
know. I love
still
that.
together. Yeah, but yeah, there was zero in this season. I didn't get, of course I watched the whole thing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there wasn't really anybody on the show where I felt any sincere connection to. And now, is that the casting, or is that the city, or is that the state? I mean, Texas can be a shit show, that's for sure. There's a lot of hypocrisy in this state as a whole, like major hypocrisy. And I think that's the overall theme of the show, where you had one guy on the show that he quote unquote fell in love with a woman and then berated her for a couple of things that she did in her past. And come to find out, he had dated one of the other women that was on the show.
I think I heard about that.
Those two women became best friends on the show. And the woman that he dated basically revealed all the things that he was berating the woman that he was in love with. He had in turn done them himself. He had cheated. He had done all these things. He was an absolute hypocrite. Then there was another guy on the show that quote unquote fell in love with this woman. And the whole point of it is that we're falling in love with each other's hearts and minds. And the moment he saw her, he turned off. And this is a beautiful girl. Beautiful girl. And he said she wore too much makeup and he didn't like her. And he stopped talking completely when they went on their trip. And then when they did the reunion, I love that she doubled down. Like, not only did she wear a shitload of makeup, she got a bunch of fillers. She's like, screw you, dude. But just the hypocrisy. And that is the message that, like, being a Texan, oh yeah, that came through for sure.
That's a really interesting take. I just assumed that as the seasons have gone by, they haven't wanted to have that sense of balance as much. They've just leaned into the let's make it a shit show part of things.
I don't know, because with that they're not really making anybody do anything on that show. I even appealed to one of the executive producers. She and I actually produced a show together several years ago. And I was like, if you guys want, I mean, we as viewers want people to fall in love and stay together. Hire me. Like, I'm a therapist, I'm a producer, hire me. I'm not going to alter what anybody thinks or what anybody says, but I would like to, like, have conversations with people to expand their way of thinking about things so that it makes it, easier for them to come together, to stay together, to work out issues. And there's no interest in that.
Yeah,
and
I would love to see that.
Wouldn't that be great? And here we are. We're, the shittiest season of all of them. The shittiest one couple got married. Hire a fucking therapist.
Yeah, I mean, and even like putting that, that's what I was going to say, like on camera, and like, let's say that the couples have like a weekly check-in with a therapist, and that's, maybe parts of it will be, yeah, it's just, that makes so much sense. And it could be a learning tool for viewers who maybe are too stubborn to go to therapy by themselves.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I like having, conversations like this. And, in moments when I'm able to have speaking engagements, I love to talk to people to dispel all the myths that they have about therapy and therapists. I was in your neck of the woods a couple of weeks ago, actually, at a speaking engagement, and didn't even realize what I'd said until someone after came up to me and said, "Thank you so much for sharing that you see a therapist." And I didn't even realize it, because it just, like, I speak off the top of my head and I'm just honest. Like, I don't prepare what I'm going to say. And I didn't even realize I'd said it. And I'll go, yeah, I said most therapists see their own therapists.
Sure.
Therapists aren't therapists because they're perfect. We're people who had really typically shitty childhoods. We got therapy. We worked it out. We're still working it out, but now we feel better and we want to help other people feel better too.
That's been the through line that I've seen in my, 90 some episodes of the show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like that pivot was definitely the right call for you, because I can imagine that being a empathetic and genuine person, that it was painful to see people hurting and not being able to step in or do anything.
I had 2 shows back to back that led me to making this career switch. One show was, I was on location in Georgia the lead on the show was actually doing her own therapy on camera, and I thought it was absolute bullshit. Now, I never in my life thought about being a therapist until the moment I thought about being a therapist, and I hadn't
Interesting.
at this moment on this show. And I'm on set, and they were they were tiptoeing around something that was quite obvious about something that had happened to her, and they were tiptoeing around it. She was, and so was the therapist. And I thought, this woman is exploiting herself. She's trying to drag this out, maybe to get another season of a show. I don't know. It just felt so icky to me. And there was so
Ooh,
many
yeah.
unethical things that were happening behind the scenes, in front of the camera. And it just felt gross to me. And I had an off day, and I wake up very, very early naturally. And I woke up at my usual 5:36, but I stayed in bed until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's when I knew, like, something's off, something's wrong. What the hell is this? I can't do this shit anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not
Okay,
working.
what am I going to do instead? And so my brain just went all over the place. And then it hit me, maybe I should be a therapist. Maybe
I
I should
love
be a
that.
therapist. Yeah. And so then the show, we went from shooting in Georgia, and then everybody went back to LA, and there was more shittiness going on, and I quit. I was on set. I'm like, fuck this shit. It's bullshit. I texted a former executive producer of mine saying, hey, I'm in a shitty situation right now. What you got? You know what we do whenever, we're ending something, or we need to
Got to
move
use
on
those
to something
connections.
else.
Gig work.
Yeah. So I texted this old boss of mine, and I was like, dude, I am fucking miserable. You got anything? He's like, yeah, we had a director drop out, come to Vegas. And that was the first real world that I directed. And on that show, they give you all most shows, they give you all the casting information before the show starts. So you can read up on the people that you're going to be shooting, and then you can anticipate, behaviors and hookups and fucks and all that kind of shit.
Sure.
And so there was this one cast member that I knew immediately I was going to hate. Immediately. This kid sucks. We have nothing in common. I'm going to hate this kid. And then we shoot the show, and he had a really, really tough moment with his mother that I shot some of it and didn't shoot some of it. And what I did not shoot, I could have gotten fired for, because this kid, I mean, they're all so young. This kid's like 21 years old, and he's having a
Yeah.
complete meltdown. I'm not putting that on camera. 'Cause
Yeah,
I knew
or
how
even
to
an
do it.
option to be on the editing table.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not leaving that in anybody else's hands. So I made
Exactly.
that judgment call.
Because they would have
And
used it.
they absolutely would have used it. And I wasn't going to allow that. And because I saw, what it was I saw myself in this kid.
Oh, yeah.
That's what sealed it for me, where it's like, I can't do this anymore. My life and my time has to mean so much more. I need to have more of these moments where I can help somebody and be a part of their healing, or at least be a part of their comfort, their comfort team, something. But I can't just sit and watch people fall apart and throw a camera on and act like it doesn't matter. And years later, I confessed to that boss. I confessed. And he's like, I totally get it. He goes, yeah, I probably would have fired you. He goes, but I totally get why you did it. I get it. And I think you made the right call. Like, he grew, I grew, we all grew. And the kid that was on that show, he and I are still friends to this day.
Oh, amazing. I love a story like that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, like you pivoted, we're going to pivot the conversation a little bit away from reality TV, but there's a little bit of a segue in that creativity is the through line here.
Mm-hmm.
And you work with a lot of different people, both adults and children. So let's start with this question, actually. How do you define creativity?
Wow. Creativity. I think creativity it starts with the heart. I think creativity starts with a message that your heart wants to share, and then your mind helps bring it to life. And that can come out in so many different ways. The obvious ways, music and art, and the different mediums of art, or just thought, creativity, and just the way we think. Like, I love talking to people who have schizophrenia, people who have it, and that typically scares a lot of people in the mental health industry.
Right.
People who have psychosis, people who have autism, people who are just neurodivergent as a whole, because I feel that we're all neurodivergent. I believe every single mind out there is different and receives information differently, processes it differently, and all of these different ways need to be respected. But
I really like
creativity,
that.
yeah, I wish we as a society appreciated creativity more and really encouraged tapping into it more. That seems to be slipping away with each passing generation. It seems like
Yeah.
the younger generation, they're reclaiming it, but
I hope so.
God, we need it. Just as a world, we need it.
Absolutely. I mean, art in all forms is soul's expression.
Mm-hmm.
We need less political discourse and we need more heart. We need more empathy.
Yes.
I always am like, why are these like male politicians who, pride themselves on being reasonable and middle of the road, and why are they leading the world when what we really need right now is empathy?
Yeah.
That's a loaded topic.
It's a lot. I can talk all day about that. Just the care it's as if we care less and less about each other, and I think that means that people care less and less about themselves.
Yes, I would agree with that. I just had a conversation with somebody. Oh, it was my dad. I just had a conversation with my dad about how self-care can feed other parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important.
It is important, and I believe it's one of those things that can be contagious. The more we show ourselves taking care of ourselves, the more other people see it and they give themselves permission to do the same. But the flip side is also true. The more we hurt ourselves and then hurt other people, it gives other people the permission to hurt.
Yes.
What's the saying? Hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm.
It's the truth.
Yeah, that's the one. And so much of that pain, I think, if there's anything I've learned from being in therapy since I was like 6, it's that it usually starts in childhood. It almost always starts in childhood. And so you do work with both adults, but you have a pretty large focus on working with children, it looks like, as well. How does that work differ?
It's very different, but the same. It's very different, but the same. My work with adults typically consists of, my clientele for adults are usually very successful, high functioning men and women who hit a wall eventually in their lives where they're miserable. They're exhausted, they're burnt out, they don't like their lives, they don't like themselves, they don't like their partners, they don't know why they had children or so many children. And it's typically not about what's happening around them. It's something that happened in their childhood that set them up for this lifestyle. And then my work with children is typically helping them or teaching them coping skills to manage the adults in their lives.
Ugh, ain't that the truth?
It's cyclical. And so with kids, it's like I can be very black and white with kids. But you are more careful about what you're saying because you want them to understand, but you don't want to overwhelm them with the depth of some of the stuff that that they're going through or that they're seeing. Um, kids are very blunt, and that's what I love about kids. Kids they don't chime things on, and they don't make excuses the way adults do. Adults will lie to themselves so fast, so easily, and a kid will call out the bullshit, and they will call out their parents. And that's what a lot of parents can't stand it. They can't stand that you're telling me to get off my phone, but you've been scrolling since the moment you walked in the door from work. Kids will call out an adult's hypocrisy, and adults hate that shit.
Yeah.
And I always say to an adult, like, whatever it is you want your kid to do, they need to see you doing it consistently and enthusiastically.
We are always modeling for the kids in our lives. Absolutely, always. And when you work, I imagine, a lot of like CBT therapy and DBT therapy is, helpful for adults. But with kids, it's like you said, you have to simplify things a little bit. I know that there are therapies. When I was going to therapy as a kid, there were like toys. So I know that creativity is a really big part of doing therapy with a child. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Creativity is really important when it comes to kids, because you have to, as you're working with a child, you have to take into account the development of the brain, because we as human beings, our brains keep developing until our mid-20s. I think a lot of people feel that, everything shifts at 18. You can smoke, you can go to the army, and you're completely an adult and your brain is developed, and that's not true. And so you have to shift how you communicate with a child depending on how old they are. So that means that sometimes you have to incorporate different tools to help a child engage comfortably. And because a lot of times they don't have the words, they don't have the vocabulary to articulate what they're thinking and feeling. And so that's where, sand tray can come in. That's where playing with toys, and setting up a whole world, based just in toys, where a toy can represent mom and dad, where I can show what this toy is doing, but it's hard for me to say what daddy's doing. Also, with adults, I do therapy. Like I do therapy virtually now. So I don't work with children any longer, because all of my therapy is virtual, and being in the same space with a child in order to build rapport and to build that therapeutic alliance is so incredibly important that it's nearly impossible to do that online with a little kid, which is why you had so many children really just falling apart during the pandemic. Like, I believe that our societies are going to feel the ripple effect of the trauma that little children felt in those years, where they had no outlets, they couldn't see their friends, they couldn't go to therapy, they couldn't play the way that they normally did. Like, we really are going to feel this for generations. The couple of years where kids were locked into, homes where, one day they went to school and all their friends were there, and then all of a sudden they didn't go back and they didn't see their friends for a couple of years.
Immediately. Things changed on a dime.
It changed on a dime, and they don't understand why.
No.
They didn't understand why. And it's like, there's only so much that you can say, but little kids, that abstract thought and big picture thinking, that doesn't hit a kid until they're like 11 or 12.
Right. But by then, like, those responses are already ingrained in your body. And
Yeah. So there were so many little kids that had no idea what was going on, but they felt the anxiety, the anger, the fear of the adults that were around them that weren't explaining effectively enough to them what was going on. They could feel it, but they didn't know what it was. So working with kids, I find kids amazing, because kids will cut to the chase. Kids will be honest with you, even when you don't want them to be. And you just want to squeeze them and put them in your pocket and take them home.
Yeah.
They're just so sweet. But I realized there was a lot of anger that came out of me working with children, because you realize just how vulnerable they are, and you want to throttle any adult that hurts them or doesn't see them, doesn't value them. It's painful. It's tough working with children, which is why most therapists do not work with little kids. It's so sad.
Because they need it.
Kids
They need it arguably the most.
They need it the most, and it tickles your own trauma. Working with a little kid reminds you of you and all the things that you went through and the things that were done to you and the things that weren't done to help you. So,
Right.
It's very difficult to find a child therapist for a variety of reasons. Most therapists do not work with little kids.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I got lucky that I had one
Mm-hmm.
in my life really early on.
Yeah.
But you raised an interesting point too. I mean, that when you work with children, your own, I've been doing a lot of like inner child work, and that in many ways is a creative way of thinking that adults have to do to switch around their thinking, to think more creatively, to allow them to connect with that inner child.
And it's extremely important work, and it's very difficult work, because if you're a little kid that was dismissed, then you grow up thinking that you're supposed to be dismissed, and so you take a cue from the people around you that ignored you and dismissed you, and then you start doing that to yourself.
Yeah. Yep, that's definitely true.
Well, so with the clients that I work with, the adults that I work with, it becomes a difficult thing to get them to engage in self-care, to engage in it at all, and then to engage in it consistently, because self-care is an intentional time that you take to love on yourself and appreciate yourself and take care of yourself. And if that wasn't modeled for you, you don't know how to do it. And in a lot of ways, we're taught that it's selfish. Especially women are taught that you put yourself on the back burner because of your husband and your children, your partner. You don't matter. You don't matter at all. It's your identity is based on everything that is external to you: your children, your job, your partner. And so it's a very difficult transition for a lot of people to make, to slow down and pay attention to how you're feeling and listen to what your body is saying to you, and then make changes so that you feel better as fast as possible. You feel better in a sustainable way. That is a really difficult thing for people to do.
It is. I'm doing a somatic therapy workbook right now, and I get frustrated because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel, like being present in my body, because my brain is always going at a mile a minute. It's difficult to sit and just be present. So I totally get that. It's difficult work.
And it's difficult work, and it's hard to be quiet, and it's hard to look inside. And I think it's like there's so many things that we don't get the context for. Like I say to people all the time, like my specialty is trauma work, and I try to help people prepare for looking for a trauma therapist. And one of the things that I say is just like, if your therapist says this, run away. If your therapist does that, run away. They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yep.
Just because, trauma is a thing. Everybody's talking about trauma, but trauma, working with trauma, it's specialized training that you don't get unless you pay for it. Do not assume that because a therapist is a therapist, they have an idea of how to work with trauma. They don't. You have got to ask. And they will typically tell you. So you definitely have to read a bio. But, meditation is a very dangerous thing for someone who has unhealed trauma. But what do we hear all the time? Get quiet, meditate. That is a very difficult thing to do, to be quiet with your thoughts and then your memories. And then when I get triggered, what the hell do I do then?
Yep. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's dangerous. You can't just have a blanket intervention that say you need to do this without context of, what someone's history is. And trauma therapy, like run. If you start therapy with a brand new therapist and like, tell me about your sexual assault. Tell me about your childhood abuse. And if that's how your therapy starts, run.
Yeah, no. No. What I did, and I don't know if this is helpful, but it's advice for anybody who, like, it's kind of tangential, but for people who, may be nervous about starting therapy or don't know how to address those things, I literally made my current therapist a PowerPoint presentation and sent it to her. And we spent 2 sessions going over it because I was
You
just
were
like,
such a producer. You were such a producer.
I was just like, I've had a few therapists and I was sick of going through the same story. You don't know if, it's going to be a good fit. Luckily, this one is, but the way I did it is I was like, here is an important moment in my life that I'm not willing to get into, but it's important that you know that this is where it fits in my story. And that way you can kind of warm up into discussing those heavier issues.
Yeah, this is going to come up. This gives you, I love the PowerPoint. This gives you context as to why I say what I say and why I think how I think and how I feel what I feel. We're not going to go down that road just yet, but this will help you color the picture and put pieces together.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a very useful thing. I'm like, why don't more people do this? They had pictures and everything.
But it's overwhelming.
It is. It's a homework assignment that you have to give yourself and really follow through on. So I understand people not wanting to do it.
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, getting back to the idea of creativity and how you mesh kind of these two worlds that you straddled for a period of time, and how do you bring your background in entertainment and your creativity into your work in therapy with your clients?
I just wrote a book and I've got a second one coming. So writing is very helpful to me, and structuring what I am writing in a way that it is truthful yet entertaining is also something that I like to do. And just articulating what's in your head and putting it out in a way that people can understand it is very difficult, but helpful, because every time I write, all the time that I'm writing, I'm healing myself. When I'm working with clients, I try to lean into whatever it is that they currently do. I always ask, what is your current self-care routine, and what are your creative outlets? And there are a lot of people that currently are not doing any of the things that they used to do. And so I always try to encourage re-engaging with the self that is, the photographer, the person that does pottery or does, scrapbooking. Like, you need to feed that side of yourself. And if you feel comfortable sharing and showing me, please do, but you don't have to. This isn't a homework assignment that I'm going to grade. I just want you to be a fulfilled human being. So, I talk to my clients about what it is that brings a smile to their face. With me, I love to write, but I also binge watch dumb shows. So I've got clients that, that's their thing. And I have clients all the time text me, oh my God, you've got to watch blah, 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 blah. You've got to see this. One of my clients sent me Jury Duty. You've got to see this show, Jury Duty. And have you heard of Jury Duty?
I haven't, no.
Oh my God, you've got to watch this show. It is beautiful. It will just restore your faith in humanity. It is a scripted, hold on. It's a jury that is part of trying a case. Everybody on it is an actor except for the jury foreman, and he has no idea that everybody's an actor, including the plaintiff, including the judge. Everybody's an actor. And James Marsden, the actor, is in it. He's central to it. It is hilarious. It's so friggin' funny. So that was a digression. But I try to encourage people to do things that will help them feel happy and smile and feel connected to a different side of their brain that isn't in constant hustle mode. That's the other thing. Like, we are a society that is so hell-bent on producing things, grinding things out. And I try to get people out of that mentality and get into the soft life mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Soft
Yes,
life.
soft life. I've heard that phrase more and more recently. I love that. And that show sounds great, by the way. I'll have to look it up.
You've got to watch it. It's so great. It's a laugh out loud show because this poor guy has no idea what the hell's going on in his expressions. And he's just a good dude. He's such a good guy, and all this ridiculousness is happening around him. And he handles it with such grace. So he's so kind, and he's caring and empathetic, and he's amazing.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, and it's kind of one of those things too. What you said reminded me, self-care can be absolutely vital to letting your brain turn off from that hustle mode. I remember a therapist, a few years back, I was just like talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And she was like, okay, we're going to take a breather. You need to find something to occupy your brain. I mean, that's why I started running a couple weeks ago. And that's why I do that, is because it just gets my brain to like shut the fuck up for a minute. But what if somebody doesn't have any creative outlet, or they feel like, oh, I'm not an artist, or I don't have, a talent when it comes to singing or acting? What if they feel creativeless isn't a word, but you get my thought.
No, I get what you're saying. I just do something simple. I say, go on a walk. And that walk doesn't have to be like, I have to go an hour and trek into nature. Nature, that's fantastic if you have access to it, but just a walk in your neighborhood, and a slow walk. Not you're trying to burn a bunch of calories and work up a sweat. I'm talking walk slowly so you can see the different trees that are on each block. So you can see the different doors that are on the houses on your street. Look at the leaves. Download, there's a bunch of different plant apps where you can just download, take a picture of a leaf, and it will tell you where the plant comes from and what it produces and when it goes dormant. That's the simple things. A couple of years ago, I went to Mexico, and whenever I travel these days, I always go on these food tours. And I did a food tour that was so spectacular because the guy took us around to all of these, hole-in-the-wall restaurants. And in between each one, he talked to us about all the street art. All the graffiti and who the artists were and the genres. There's beauty everywhere if we choose to see it that way.
A lot of people call those all walks, yeah?
Oh, well, I love that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, all walks. Just being in wonder of the world around you.
Be in wonder. I love listening to books on Audible, and sometimes I will do that, and sometimes I won't, and I'll just want to listen to the sounds that I hear. I'm going to crunch the acorns under my feet and listen to the different birds and the squirrels. And that is, does that squirrel have a black tail or a gray tail or a brown tail? Just being observant of what's happening around you and just being in awe of nature, the creativity of nature. And just how many different types of flowers do you see on this walk? You don't have to create anything. You could observe the creations of other people and get something out of it.
Definitely. And everything that you're saying hits on a lot of things that I've been doing lately in my somatic practices. Yeah. But being able to go for a walk and just unplug from your brain and just observe, that's being truly present. Amazing.
Observe. Just smell and listen. There's a dog park by my house. I don't have a dog right now, but I will just go to the dog park and watch the dogs be dogs.
Oh, yeah.
They're just so funny and silly and sweet and genuine. There was this one day I was out there just observing, and there was a hound dog out there that I'd never seen before. And this hound dog was hound dogging. It found a squirrel in a tree, and it was making that guttural hound, that howl that dogs make.
Oh, yeah.
And there were probably 20 other dogs in the dog park, and they all stopped, turned towards this dog, and they all one by one started howling too. It was extraordinary. It was an amazing moment that I wouldn't have noticed had I had something playing in my ears.
Right.
Or if I had just been on a mission of just moving. I stopped and I just watched.
Yeah. No, I love that. That is a really great example of just taking it all in.
Yeah.
Well, we're running down low on time, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about your books and, what you want people to learn from those, and to take a little bit of time just to promote yourself. Let us know where we can find you.
Sure. My website is Melody, LMFT.com, and that's also me on Instagram. So Melody, LMFT stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. I just released my very first book about 3 weeks ago, and it is called Mourning the Living, When the Loved One You've Lost is Still Here. And it helps people manage the emotions and hard decisions that have to be made when it comes to dealing with the toxic people in our inner circle.
Yeah.
And each chapter is a different relationship dynamic. It starts with fathers, goes on to mothers, children, siblings, and friends, and then it ends with ourselves. But it also talks about why is it so hard to create boundaries with people that are closest to us.
Ugh, the biggest
And
question.
oh yeah. And it covers, how to set boundaries, why we need boundaries, the different types of boundaries, codependency, dysfunctional family systems, attachment styles. And, each chapter is split half and half. The first half of the chapter are stories of people who have had to manage the expectations and create boundaries with certain people in their lives, or cutting people off altogether, and what that was like and how hard it was and why they did it. And then the last half of the book, or not, the last half of each chapter, is my work with clients who had to do similar things. How I
Okay.
worked with them to help them decide, do you want to maintain this relationship? And if so, this is how you do it. Or do you want to end this relationship? And how do you make yourself feel okay with ending it? And how do you do it? And how do you maintain that boundary so you can protect yourself? So that just came out. It is available on Amazon, and it's going to be in Barnes and Noble. It's going to be everywhere books are sold.
Woohoo.
Yeah. And then I have a workbook that, like, when I had writer's block, I had writer's block at a time that coincided with this brand new client that I was working with. She's a Google executive and very
Ooh.
type A. And she says to me, okay, Melody, what are you going to do to me? And I said, excuse me? I need a plan. I need to know what my plan is going to be. What are you going to do? How are you going to help me? I need to know what I'm getting myself into. And I thought, well, we did have the 15-minute consultation, so you know how I work. But then I realized what she wanted. She wanted she wanted to know, she wanted to calm down her anxiety so she could prepare
Mm-hmm.
herself what was coming up. And so based on her, I created a workbook called My Bounce Back Plan. And she was coming off of big realizations. She was coming off of a breakup. She was burnt out at work, and dealing with some realizations that she had with her mother and father and her childhood. And so she was really in a tough spot. And so the workbook is meant to be like a living book, in that it will grow with you. Each chapter is a different step in the healing process and how you can heal yourself, because therapy is not for everybody. It's not affordable to everyone. It's not accessible to everyone. And so this workbook, and there are going to be a lot of therapists that hate me for this shit. This workbook is meant to circumvent the therapeutic process. This is a way that you can help yourself. I definitely think, there are certain things that, it's good to talk to a professional about so that you can take care of yourself and get tools to get through it. But the whole book is all tools. It is all tools on how you create a healing squad. Who's your
Yeah.
mentor, who's your friend, who is your peer? What could your spiritual practice be? Is it meditation? Is it nature walks? Is it going to church, if that's your thing? How do you handle yourself physically, like moving? Is it going to the gym? Is it somatic exercise? There's a whole chapter that's about somatics. Is
Amazing.
it yoga? Is it tapping? And so each step, and it begins with, this is the hardest part, is it begins with doing nothing. Because a lot of times when life hits us, upside the head, a lot of us have a tendency, some people shut down completely, and some people dive into busyness. And so my suggestion is to shut down, but not shut down in a hardcore depressive way, but slow down so that you don't make the same mistakes. If, depending on what the loss is, slow down and really get in touch with how you feel. This is a moment for reinvention, if that's what you want, but you need to slow down so that you can really acknowledge what just happened to you, what just changed in your world, so you can try to identify what you're feeling and then figure out what your path forward looks like. So each chapter there are prompts, and then there's a bunch of empty pages through, at the end of every chapter, so that when the next moment happens to you, you don't have to start from ground zero in your healing journey. You can pick up this workbook and go, these are the things that helped before. These are the exercises that helped. These are the people that I leaned on. Can I go down this road again using the same tools, or do I need to add new people, different exercises? And then you just keep adding to the workbook as you heal and you grow, because there's certain tools that work for us at a certain stage in our lives, but as we heal and we grow, those things don't serve us anymore.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It's meant to grow with you.
I love that. That's such a great toolbox of things.
Mm-hmm. And it's all in one spot, and it's not some big, thick, heavy something, but it's just bam, here we go. Let's talk about, what are you thinking? Give yourself the space to feel it. And then these are the things you can do to help yourself when you get triggered, when you feel stuck, when you feel alone. Try these things.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
And you have another book coming out too, so I'll be excited to learn more about that when that comes out.
Yeah, I'm excited. That should be out early December, just in time for Christmas.
All right, nice. Yeah. Perfect. Well, Melody, thank you so much for coming on here and letting me pick your brain about reality TV, but also, talking about how you morphed that creative side of you and use it now in therapy practice, and how people can utilize creativity themselves to heal and be overall healthy. I'm really excited to let this one out to the world.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I really, really love your questions and love talking to you. And I'm always very appreciative of people who have healing as their own journey and wanting to help other people on the path. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's some days it's hard, but it's what other choice do you have, right? To shut down, which is not really a good option. So
it's not a good option.
Well, listeners, thank you for being here today. Check out, I'm going to have to get a copy of that workbook. Check out the workbook, check out the book, follow Melody on all of the socials. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to Wine, Dine, and 69. I'm your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.